In your own words, could you describe diabetes?
Oh, wow. Somebody that has a life-changing illness. It really is, because it's not like some of the other illnesses that, with heart disease and different things. Some of those can be more treatable with procedures and different things. And with diabetes, it's really life-changing.
Okay, we'll come back to that. What do you think causes diabetes?
Lifestyle, hereditary, the food choices that we make. Those would be the main things.
And what about risk factors? What kinds of risk factors are out there in the community?
I think, again, our Appalachia culture that we live in, because we like the biscuits and the gravy and all the food choices and the biggie sizes and all that kind of stuff. I think the lack of activity, just the sedentary lifestyle that we live, all of that.
So I have to ask you, do you go to buffets?
Not very much. After nursing school kind of did away with that. After I took microbiology, I was afraid to go to buffets.
We'll probably edit that out.
Yeah, edit that out. But no. Yeah. Not endorsed by.
What do you think a person that has diabetes needs to do to keep the disease under control?
I think they need to be aware of their own health, know their body, know what's normal for them, what's not normal for them. I think they need to be aware of their blood glucose levels, which is a lot of times, especially as a healthcare professional, I see that people don't monitor that real closely. But I think they just need to be aware of what is their normal range and then compared to what's abnormal.
As a nurse, you just said be aware of your body. And, could you say a little bit more about what that would look like? Or what that might mean?
More about if your body's giving you signs. If you're tired all the time and you think maybe it's just because you stayed up late or you woke up early. If you are maybe sickly more than you used to be. Just different things like that. As far as, I think back even with my own father, who's a diabetic, he thought that he was on this great weight loss program, that he would just drink a gallon of water every day, and he lost all this weight. Well, that wasn't normal for everybody else. He had all these other people he had convinced that all you had to do was drink water. Everybody else is retaining it, but he's losing and losing weight. So I think you have to just be aware if that's something that you didn't do in the past.
So say a little bit more about your parents. Both have diabetes.
My dad has been diabetic for probably about 25 years. He was diagnosed in his early 40s. Has type 2, of course, although now they say that he is more of a type 1 because he is on insulin. He's actually on a pump. Prior to going on his pump, he took 6 shots a day plus 4 oral medications. He's on dialysis now, and that kind of controls his life. But my mom is a diabetic also. She's been diagnosed for probably about 5 years. And she just takes oral medication, but is able to control it with diet and exercise also. But with my dad, it's his way of life now.
And how does your mom and dad interact with each other around having the same disease?
It's funny because he's more compliant than she is. His, like I was telling you a little bit ago, his A1C is 7. Which is good for him, and hers is 11, but yet she's the one that drives him to dialysis and picks him up and stayed with him when he was in the hospital 35 days last year, and knows how bad the disease has caused his health to be, but yet, as a result, doesn't take care of herself that well.
And why do you think that she doesn't take care of herself?
I think a little bit of denial. I think that she thinks, maybe if I don't think about it, if it'll go away, But I think, and her grandmother was a severe diabetic also, and I've heard her talk about when she was little and how her grandma, lost her vision and everything because of diabetes. But it's just kind of one of those out of sight, out of mind things, I think.
And you have other brothers
Nope,
and sisters?
only child.
You're the only child?
I'm the only child, yep.
So what kind of messages do they give you or do you take from this?
You know, we really don't talk about it. I know my dad will ask me, do I keep an eye on my sugar, which I do. I tend to be on the low side because my son's 9 years old, and when I was pregnant with him, I was really low and had to watch. But as I'm getting older, I try to be more aware. And especially now that I'm approaching about the age that he was diagnosed. But, you know, we really don't talk about it a whole lot. I don't know. That's kind of an interesting thing because I've never heard either one of them say, I hope this doesn't happen to you, but yet I think they do, you know. So
they don't sort of check up on you?
No.
What's meals like at your house? Or at your parents' house?
At my parents' house, they're both retired now. So my dad actually had to take early retirement because of his diabetes. They used to be very fast food, eat out a lot. But especially now that he's on dialysis, his diet is so much stricter. So they eat at home most of the time. They are more into portion control now. And the biggest thing I think I've noticed with them is some of the things that they would think it was okay to make or to eat, even though it might have been healthier, it still is not as healthy as what he needs to eat now. So I have seen a change in that.
The dialysis diet's pretty challenging.
Yes.
Has your mother learned what she needs to do to...
Yeah, because actually when he first went on dialysis, they met with the dietitian there at the dialysis center, and they mapped out meals for him and different things. So they know, and even like they're very active in our church, and they'll go to carry-ins and different things, and you know they know what they can eat, or you know if he eats something of this, then he knows he has to have more of a protein or different things. Fluid.
Is a problem.
Yes.
Does he have difficulty with that?
Because, of course, with diabetes, it makes you thirsty all the time, but he's not allowed to drink that much. So that's one thing I've noticed at their house. They went from bigger size drinks, water bottles, to the smaller size, you know, again, portion control. Yeah.
What do you think the most important thing a person with diabetes needs to do to control the disease?
I think, again, it goes back to being aware if you start having symptoms to get a hold of them. My dad, they feel, was probably a diabetic for about 5 years before he was diagnosed. And I think that that's one thing in our society. A lot of people will ignore symptoms that they have. But I think, you know, it's not a curable disease, but it's preventable. And I think that's one thing, especially with type 2s. And the type 1's a little different. But with type 2s, I think if you are aware of your surroundings, what you're eating, what you're doing, that kind of thing, that will really help you.
You're a diabetes educator. What kinds of things do you see in the clients that you care for?
The biggest thing that we see is lack of knowledge. They don't truly understand what their disease is. They don't truly understand how to take care of their disease. What they think is that they're a diabetic, they can't have anything with sugar in it. You know, they think that, and like my beginning statement was, it's a life-changing thing. It is very life-changing, but yet it's very manageable. And so I think that's one of the biggest things is they don't realize that, you know, with diet and exercise, they can still live a very healthy life.
I hear people talk about the way people in the region cook. Do you have any ideas about that? Yeah,
a lot of fat, a lot of salt, all of the things that we really shouldn't have, you know, the unhealthy butters and oils, they don't think about using olive oil, which is a healthier version. And that's one of the things with our diabetes education, we've been able to provide some cooking classes. And through teaching them how you can use seasonings, you can use the healthy oils, and still make those green beans taste just as good without all the bacon grease and all that kind of stuff.
How do you think eating the traditional foods compares to eating the processed foods?
I think that the traditional foods don't have as many additives and preservatives in them, which is sometimes some of the unhealthy things. I think a lot of it, again, though, goes back to portion control. And we try to tell them in our education classes, you can still have sugar, you can still have things, you just have to have it in moderation.
How do you teach people what moderation is?
Well, we actually use portion plates because most people in our area are visual people. So, if you tell them, oh, you need to have something the size of your fist or whatever, that doesn't always make them understand. So we actually were able to purchase plates that are divided off and into portions, and so we can actually teach them what is a healthy portion of different things to eat.
Have you seen
the new portion? What's it called? It's the new food plate. Yes, yes, which is along the same lines.
What do you think about it?
I think it's good. I like the idea that it's easy to visualize what's on your plate compared to what you see in a pyramid.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes a big difference.
Yeah, I think so too. I agree with you there. What do you think is the biggest challenge for people in this region in taking care of their diabetes?
I think lack of resources. In our area, we don't have as many resources as some of the big cities and different things have. We only have one big exercise facility. Luckily, we have one in Wheelersburg and in Lucasville that are life centers through our organization, and then the big one here in Portsmouth. But, we don't have the well-defined bicycle routes and all the different things that some of the bigger cities have. I think lack of, again, some education. People don't always realize where they can go to get resources and get help. And I think some people are this area is very private. Their health care, they don't always share with people. Again, it's kind of one of those out of sight, out of mind, little bit of denial.
Did you see the film, The Field of Dreams?
Yes.
All right, so
Build it and they will come.
all right, so, sometimes we have tracks and things.
Mm-hmm.
We have, do people use the ones we have? Or how do we get them to come?
Well, and that's the thing. I think that, every school in our area, we have the life centers, every school in our areas. We have, myself, my husband, and I walk around the cemetery here in Portsmouth. But I think a lot of people won't go out and seek that information. They won't go out and look for it. And I think that a lot of times we just maybe haven't done a real good job of letting people know what is out there. Just because we are smaller and rural doesn't mean we don't have some of the things. We maybe not have as many resources as some other places, but
in the community, what can we do to help prevent diabetes?
Education, I think, is one of the biggest things, is if we can educate people on, especially like I said, that type 2 is a preventable, with your lifestyle, with the things you eat. If you have family risk factors, then staying on top of getting screened, different things like that really make a difference.
Sometimes in doing education, you run into problems, like people don't want to come.
Right.
You have things and they don't come. Any ideas about how we can take and present educational ideas or facts or information in different ways than what we've done?
We've talked a lot here about that people won't always come to us. For one thing, transportation, the price of gas, babysitting, all that kind of thing. So I think we really have to take things to them. I think we really have to be out in the community and offering different locations. Most of the places have a fire department. Most of the places have a church. So I think you have to think outside the box, not just in the hospital setting, but how can we get out into the community and take that education to them? I made home visits for 10 years, and I used to say, it was their playground, so we play by their rules, and that's almost the same way. We have to take it to them to get it to them, because it takes their buy-in too. Mm-hmm. They're comfortable in their surroundings.
Any thoughts about use of technology?
I think that, and a lot of times we think, especially the older population, won't have email and different things, but I've seen it at our own church. Probably the majority of the older population in our church has an email address. So I think email, I think stuff on the computers, webinars, everybody's got smartphones, different things like that. Always making sure that the education is delivered in all kinds of modes.
Are you doing anything here?
We
with
have,
those technologies?
we're actually in the process of trying to develop some webinars. Andy helped me out with some, we had a live speaker a couple months ago, and we taped it, and we're going to try to do a live webinar feed through that people could log in from home and watch it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, so we're trying to, from a community aspect, look and see how we can offer different modes.
Mm-hmm. What do you think is the most important thing that people need to know?
I think that, especially with type 2 diabetes, that they need to know that it is preventable, that they really can, if they, watch what they're eating, if they become active, and if they really pay attention to their doctor, go see the doctor regularly. That's another big thing, that they can stay on top of it. And then if they find out that they are a type 2, I think knowing that they can control it. It's really a controllable disease too.
Mm-hmm. If you were to make changes in your neighborhood, and I
Mm-hmm.
take it you must live in town,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you were to make changes in your neighborhood to prevent diabetes, what kind of things might you do? You had no lack of resources, right?
Right, no lack of resources. I think just, setting up more support services for them. And that's one thing, we've been very lucky for the past 18 months to have a grant through Ohio Department of Health that we have formed almost little support groups for all of these people. And what we have found is our very first class that we have, they have all stuck together and come to anything that we offer. And it's amazing the bond that they have created out of their disease process. And, even family members that have come as a support person that aren't a diabetic, they still want to come back to the classes too, and it's just, I think the more support that, if we could have endless money and endless resources to just create support groups to provide education.
Okay, but we don't have endless.
We don't. So I think the main thing is to just keep awareness out there. If we can just, make sure that everybody is aware that the disease is there. It's not going away. We know from the CDC that the numbers are going to triple in the next several years. And I think just to make people aware of that it's out there.
So I'm going to ask you a tough question.
Okay.
A lot of what we talk about in general, not just you, but in general,
Mm-hmm.
public, has to do with individual behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
What about the larger society? Are there things in the larger community that relate to policy or the environment that you might think about as things to address or change?
I think if we could get local grocery stores, local restaurants, even the schools on board more with nutrition, I think that's one of the biggest things is that, you go to the grocery store, you go to a restaurant, and sometimes you look for things that are cheap. Things that are cheap may not always be healthy. At school, I know, they're on a tight, rigorous schedule, and sometimes things that are quick aren't always healthy. So I think if we could change any kind of policy or anything within the community, it would be to get everybody to work together, of course, as a team. But if we could really address, where people are going, they're going to the store, they're going to school, they're going to fast food places. How can we get that if they still have to go to those places, how can they provide them with a healthier choice?
Do you think that just health professionals need to be doing the education?
No, I think it needs to come from everybody, because especially in our area, Appalachia is a different culture, and I think that people relate to people that they know, whether it's going to church with them, whether it's they grew up with them, whatever. And I think it's easier to hear it from somebody that has walked the walk. You have to walk the walk to talk the talk. I mean, it's easy for me as a nurse to stand up and say, oh, don't do this, don't do this. But if I say, well, I've lived it with my parents, You know, my dad one time was, we were at the zoo and his blood sugar bottomed. He couldn't even swallow. I had to put food in his mouth and massage his throat to get him to swallow. And I think if I can share stories, that makes it easier for somebody to believe me than for me to just stand up there and say, well, because I have credentials behind my name, this is what you have to do. So I think it needs to come from everybody.
Okay. I just want to go back to one thing, and
Okay.
we're almost finished. Did you belong to any groups? I think I heard you say church.
Church. Mm-hmm.
Any other?
I'm trying to think. My son is in school, so I go to some of his school activities and different things. Through the course of my life, I've belonged to other organizations and different things.
Is there anything that we could do with groups, whether they're school groups or civic groups or church groups? Any ideas about things we could do to kind of enforce this prevention message?
I think, again, maybe when we're meeting with these groups, find out who within that group is a diabetic. And I think I've done that before, and I think that people will be amazed of how many people in the room are diabetic and you don't even know. So I think if you raise the awareness of people around you that are diabetic, that will help with raising the awareness overall and prevention.
Okay, after you've had everybody raise their hand, what would be the next thing you want folks to do?
Again, I think kind of almost, again, the support group, I'm back to that because I think that it's a very tough disease. It is, and I think you need, again, back to the walk, talk the talk. I think for people to know that somebody else has been there and done that, or they've had a family member, it would make it easier for them. And so I think if everybody was just kind of like a support system, an extended family almost, which is what we see a lot of in Appalachia anyway.
Do you think becoming a support system is a natural thing, or do you think we need to teach people how to do that too?
I think both. I think in our area it is a natural thing, even you think about at church, you meet somebody and they kind of take you under your wing. You start a new job, you find somebody that can take you under your wing. But yet I think there's still people out there that need that nurturing. But I think that for the most part in our area, it would probably be a pretty easy thing.
That's really all the questions. But
Okay.
Before we wind up here, is there anything else that we didn't talk about that you think is important? Any ideas that you have that you'd like to share, or personal stories?
No, I think just back to what I said at the beginning, it's a very life-changing thing. I can remember, when my dad was first diagnosed, it was really hard on him, because at 25 years ago, you heard about diabetes, but you still didn't hear, that was something you heard, your grandma or your grandpa or somebody had. But it has been a life-changing event for our whole family. My son is 9, and I asked him one day something about diabetes. I said, do you know anybody with diabetes? And he said, yeah, my Guy has diabetes. I said, well, what's that mean? And he said, that just means that he's got too much sugar in him. And I said, yeah, that's right. And I think that that's the thing, if we can start and educate people from the time they're little and all the way up, then, maybe and hopefully we can get a better handle on the disease.
Do you think your son knows what causes it?
I think he does, yeah. Now, he has had some misconceptions that, because he came home one day and said that, because he doesn't drink pop, which is not a bad thing. He likes only fruit juice, though. And he said that somebody told him he's going to become a diabetic because all he drinks is fruit juice. So we kind of had to have a little education session about, no, it's not the fruit juice itself that makes you diabetic. But, and I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there about diabetes anyway.
Yeah.
So.
And you probably see some of that
in our classes, we do.
Classes that you do.
Yeah, we do.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.